Hey everybody, welcome back to What's Next. Today we're going to be talking about Moonlight episode 5, The Asylum. And I'm here, joined as always with my main man, the founder of the Circle Club, Tyrone. Tyrone, how you doing today?
Great. Man, bro, like this series might be mid, bro. Like this series might be mid. Like definitely a lot of cool content. We keep saying this every week. Like cool concepts. Like for me this week, just the hippopotamus thing. I thought she was gonna be a bit more like a god, like impactful, like give him some insight. But she was just kind of like another character almost, like getting us from point A to B. What she did say that was interesting was that there's multiple interpretations of the afterlife. Like, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I like that because they, as you remember in that spot when she teased that up, she did mention the afterlife specifically for Wakandans and the ancestral plane.
Yep.
So I think that was really one of our biggest connections to the larger MCU, which was interesting. She was definitely right. The ancestral plane is very beautiful.
Yes.
But yeah, I feel the same way as you. I feel like a parent that like has been telling the kid like let's go and they just won't go. Like,
right, yeah. Get your clothes on.
It's like they keep developing the story further, and I really don't have a problem with what the pace that they're at if there was more episodes. I think that's been our biggest problem. We know that time is ticking down. With only one episode left, I'm very frustrated with where we're left off. I feel like there should still be like 3 or 4 more episodes left to go, and like especially this episode, like we really should have gotten this maybe an episode or 2 ago.
And it feels like a lot of this stuff here was kind of thrown in. Like we got the Mark's origin DID story, you know, how he got it. We got Mark and Steven's origin. Like we see Steven finally come out. Now we're like, is there a third altar? Like, is that even a thing? We get to see Khonshu and Mark's first interaction. There's so much going on that we're like, how are you going to close this out in the last episode? We didn't even get to see Layla. I don't think the last 2 episodes, maybe. We run out of time, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I think this is like, I think this is what's the show is really boiling down to, right? They're introducing a lot of concepts and interesting aspects to the show, right? That are interesting, that have been keeping us plugged in and keeping us wanting to see more. But overall, where we're just really frustrated is this piece of like, we know there's missing action. Like that's the thing to me, is like we really haven't had the fight against Arthur, right? And it makes you feel like, okay, so this is all just gonna get wrapped up and solved in like one episode, right? Like I feel like everything that's kind of just been put on pause, and it's been like a whole different show because now we're in this like, okay, has everything been real? Has it not been real?
Right.
Like, clearly, like we know everything has been real, but like this seemed like an episode that really should have been episode 3, not 5. And that's where we're at. I feel like I'm just getting very frustrated with the fact that I just keep learning about the background. It's all about the background. And that's how all it feels like to me.
And that's cool to get the background, to learn who he is. But when you're trying to deliver a show, that's not a show to me. That's not a show. Like you're basically giving us an origin story in bits and pieces while also saying, hey, this is what Marvel can do, by the way. Hey, this is what Marvel can do, by the way. Hey, we got zombies, by the way. And there's not a good story. Like, if you say, what is Moonlight about to someone who doesn't know anything about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, it's like, it's a story about a man who realizes that he has DID, and now he's in Egypt. But we're heading towards the what was it, like the heart of Osiris, or the gates of Osiris,
the field of reeds, right? So she described it as Osiris has the only pathway out of this afterlife scenario, right? Judgment, right? And what they've basically established to us, and what I really got out of this episode, is that everything to this point was to get Mark in a position to be comfortable with his reality of his situation, why Steven was even meant, right? Like you even saw it in this episode that Mark was really trying to avoid the truth, right? He still was trying to protect himself and stay away from it. And it was really Steven who was like, hey, no, like we need to face this. Like we need to go see what it is, right? And I think that's what they've really made this whole show about, which I don't fully hate. It goes back to what I've been saying in some of our other reviews. Like you really need to establish who they are and get them in a spot where they are solidified in knowing where their situation is before you go introduce them to the rest of the MCU. And I think Mark is closer to that spot of fully accepting who he is in his situation, and why he has those other identities or alters, so to speak. But it just felt like it took a long time to get to it, and that's the problem I have with it, right? I feel like you could have condensed this and got a lot of that point across and established, like, the one thing I think we both like about this episode is how they really actually portrayed how he got his disorder, right? I think they really nailed that to real life, and that was something I really did appreciate in this episode. I just felt like they could have executed that a lot sooner and removed a lot of other fluff in here that got us a little bit quicker to that spot that, hey, Mark's ready, we got Khonshu back, now let's go deal with this threat. And I feel like it's just not a lot of time. It reminds me of WandaVision in a sense too, right? Like I felt like it was a lot about Wanda dealing with these things, and she finally comes to the reality of like, none of this is actually like real per se. Like I kind of made this all happen, and now I got to face my consequences. And it took till that last episode to make it happen. And I think that's going to be a lot of issues that we're going to have moving forward with these Disney shows. That I'm really starting to face reality myself.
Right. And I really did, to your point, I thought they handled the whole DID thing super well. They showed how it stems from trauma, how it's used as a shield. Like even like Steven was just baffled. He's like, wait, you just lied to me? You made this up the whole time? That whole thing was super well done. But then every time we jump back to Arthur, right? And he's like Dr. Arthur and all this stuff, I'm kind of like, I even like that the Indiana Jones thing was like they did a little nod to that, right? So we're like, oh, that's where the name comes from. Simple little details like that, I think, really help tell the story. But at the end of the day, while you're doing that and developing this character, they could have kept it real simple as, we're trying to stop Arthur from releasing hell on the world, and Steven at the same time is trying to figure out who he is. But we have this thing with Layla's father, we got Arthur, we have now, they're stuck in the field of reeds.
It just seems like
locked away.
It's to your point. I think I know what you're trying to say is like, they've made some things seem like they were super important and super big, and they really aren't, right? And there's other things that didn't seem super important, super big, that probably are, right? And like I think an example of it is like something that happened in this episode that kind of stuck out to me was when Tiwa, or the hippo goddess, talked about, you started seeing things fall down from the sky, right, in the afterlife, and she's like, oh my god, like it's all coming apart. And it's like, it felt like it just happened like that. Like I thought this whole journey was about balancing the scales of Mark and Steven, and now it just completely switched to, oh wait a minute, we still have Arthur, and he's messing up everything. It's like I feel like some things are just, they added a lot of fluff where the fluff didn't need it, and they could have provided more context and details in spots that could have made that. Like, why is that all breaking down now, right? Like, like why is the afterlife breaking down just because judgment's happening, right? I feel like you've clearly, the last two episodes, haven't cared about it, right? Like you've been very focused on the situation with Mark and Steven. So why are you just randomly popping that up? So I think there's a lot of loose ends, especially at this last episode. So they're gonna really need to hit it out of the park to wrap this all up. Like it's gonna be like some Inception type stuff where I'm at the end like, wow, how did they just pull this all together? Impressive, right?
And I don't think we're gonna get there, man.
I really don't either right now.
All right, so the last thing I wanted to mention was, so we now see that Mark is balanced, and he's admitted that he's kind of not running anymore. He's not trying to hide from the truth, so he's balanced. And we also see that Steven is no longer with us. He's kicked off the boat, which ultimately makes things balanced. What do you think about that last little bit there?
Yeah, when I really think about it, right, like when you how I perceive it, right, and this is really my opinion, is like he's in this afterlife, right? Mark is the main person. Steven kind of admitted like, okay, like Like, I wasn't the main person originally, it was you, right? So it's one person, one soul, one heart, kind of to our point, right?
Right.
And something that happened is the goddess pulls out two hearts, right? And I think because of that, it's because of how Mark has handled the situation. He's really used Steven as a completely different person, hiding him from the whole truth of it, right?
Right.
And what needed to happen was they needed to go on this journey so that Steven and Mark would become one. Now, I don't think Steven's actually gone per se, but they are one person, right? So I think when they come back to real life and out of this journey in the afterlife scenario that they're in, we're still going to have Mark and Steven, but this journey allowed them to now get on foundationally the same level and understanding where they are so that they can best work with each other moving forward. Because the thing about DID is there's no cure, right? Like,
Thank you.
However, you can, I think from research we've done, you can alleviate those symptoms. And I think a lot of those symptoms and conflicts that Mark and Steven has had is the push and pull behind who is in control, right?
Right.
And I think to what we saw a lot of times in the last episode is Mark and Steven bring different strengths to the table, right? And I think them becoming balanced through this journey allows them to really better execute the things that they need to as Khonshu's avatar, whether it be Steven handling the smart, intelligent aspects,
as Hippo says,
because we've already, as the Hippo said, that was not even the first tease that somebody's saying that Steven was a smart one, right? So we really are starting to see that it's Steven gonna be handling the intellectual scenarios, and Mark will be handling the more muscle scenarios. And I think them being on the same page about who handles what, right, is important to, again, go back to what I've always talked about, sending Moon Knight off to the greater MCU universe, right? And the thing, this is what we didn't really talk about, and I don't want to dive too much into it. We've talked about a third altar tease, but we didn't really see it in this episode. So we might not even have a third altar per se. Doesn't mean it might not come later. Not yet. There could be a traumatic scenario that creates a third altar. But I think this show is really trying to establish the fact that there's two altars and that they need to get on the same page to make sure that they can move forward with their long-term journey in the MCU at the end of the day. I do think they've established that within this episode, contrary to some of the things that we do not like about what's been going on in this series.
And I think the important thing to mention too about the whole DID thing is that, like you said, there's no cure. You have it forever. You can try to find ways to alleviate like what kind of cause that trigger to make you. So for example, if someone mentions a mom, then maybe that's what makes Steven come out more than Mark, right? And I think there's probably other alters, because typically you don't have just one, there's many, and maybe he doesn't even know about that yet. Because that's what it kind of seemed like they were alluding to in some of the previous episodes. Like, he's like, I didn't do that. You didn't do that. Who did it? Right. So, and I think once he comes out of the field of reeds or seeds or whatever it is, I think what we'll find is that Steven will still be there, because ultimately Mark is the body, Mark is the soul, he's everything. I kind of liken it to it like this: an imaginary friend is very real to you. They help you get through things. They're there for all throughout the entire journey. But when you're talking about judgment or, facing the pearly gates with God, it's just you who's going through that kind of judgment scenario, not any of your other thoughts, not any other altars. And so I think that's what this is about right here. But I do not think that was the last that we saw of Steven. And I think there may be some other altars coming soon.
All right, guys. So that's our thoughts on episode 5, The Asylum for Moon Knight. And as always, appreciate you guys for watching. Make sure you follow our socials, subscribe to our channel so you can stay up to date with what we got going on. Don't be afraid to go over to the Circle Club channel and check out what Tyrone's got going on over there. We cover Marvel as well, but a whole other bunch of stuff. So if you're into movies, TV shows, make sure you check that out. But we'll be back next week for the final episode 6 of Moon Knight, and we'll give you our cold hard opinion on it, because right now we're not feeling great about this.
All right, see you guys next week. Peace.